My name is Benton Stokes. I'm a former fundamentalist, post-evangelical worship leader, and songwriter. I enjoy wry Manhattans, roller coasters, and road trips, just not all at the same time.
I'm Elane O'Rourke, and I'm a teacher, an author, and a spiritual coach. I was a philosophy professor and a liberal pastor in a couple of former lives, and these days I love aha moments and not-so-dry martinis.
We have conversations about life and God with a queer perspective, over cocktails, like you. This is Cocktail Theology. Okay, so today's cocktail is not really our favorite.
And it's a highball. It's not actually a
cocktail. It is a highball, so you're going to hear this.
Yep.
But it's not bad. And honestly, the first time that I had a Cuba Libre, I really didn't like it, but I understand why now.
Okay.
I didn't have the right rum,
okay,
and I didn't have the right soda. And I didn't have any lime. So there's no wonder I hated it so much. It was awful. So the trick to doing a Cuba Libre, which a Cuba Libre is also known as a rum and coke. Mm-hmm. Part of the trick is to use gold rum,
okay,
as opposed to purely white rum, and definitely don't use spiced rum.
Right.
Or really dark rum at all. It benefits from the gold rum. Also, using Mexican coca-cola is better than using our, Coca-Cola that's full of the corn syrup. And then having the lime juice in there is kind of important because it adds a brightness that otherwise you would miss.
Yeah.
But it's not as sweet as you would think.
No, it really isn't. I was expecting it to be a lot sweeter. What would be interesting is to try it with as we've talked about before, the rums from Cuba are different than the rums from Barbados, or different than the rums from Puerto Rico.
Absolutely.
And so I wonder how much difference that would make.
Yeah, it probably would make a lot of difference, actually.
Well, let's try it.
The other two cocktails that Cuba is known for are the daiquiri and the mojito.
Now, I'm feeling a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
I believe we've had both of those.
But they are also based on rum.
They are also based on rum.
See how clever I am? I'm pulling this together just out of the air, man. I'm feeling ready. I'm feeling
so ready. What are we talking about today?
Okay. For those of you who don't know this, we really got started in the work we do together based on kind of education plus worship. Like that's kind of how we started. And we have 4 core courses that are part of our repertoire that really help people learn to think about themselves and God and the Bible differently, particularly if you come out of an evangelical background.
Right.
So right now, we're in the midst of hosting what we've called 17 Embraceable Ideas. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the premises for 17 Embraceable Ideas is that there is a material world, and that's the one that, we see and we touch and we smell and all those things. And there's a non-material world.
Right.
Now, I almost never use the word world because that freaks people out, right? But the idea that reality contains both material and non-material. And of course, the prime example of non-material reality is God.
Right.
But it did lead me to be wondering at various times over my own history and today, what else might be in the non-material world? And of course, the Bible mentions angels.
Yes.
And the Bible mentions demons.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how I feel about any of it. So I thought we could this is more of an invitation to speculation.
Okay.
So I think we're just going to play with this idea. And listeners, if you have strong opinions about angels, demons, anything that is a non-material reality besides God, I would love to hear about your experience with that or why you believe in or all of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel confident that if there are angels and demons, they do not look like is it Raphael who made the little cherubim guys in those paintings, that then Fiorucci used later.
Right.
But I feel confident they're not like that.
Right.
And I feel confident that they're not the way they're often portrayed in movies and such, which is completely human looking.
Yes.
Right. So I feel confident that neither of those things is true. I don't know what to do with demons, so I'm going to set that aside entirely. But were you raised with the idea of angels? And what does that look like for you mentally?
Well, I was definitely raised with the idea of demons, and I was raised with the idea of spiritual warfare, where angels and demons are sort of battling it out for me and my soul.
Okay.
that is not the way I envision what's happening in the heavenlies over me all the time anymore. And I always found that view of angels and demons to be pretty scary and intimidating.
Sure.
But angels were always talked about as kind of messengers, warriors, kind of God's elite force.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That God could dispatch at God's will
Okay.
to do whatever God needed done. I was always taught that angels aren't human, that we don't become angels when we die. So I didn't grow up with the idea that I'm going to have wings and a harp. I grew up with other whacked out ideas about what's going to happen when I die, but not that.
I want to see you with wings. Anyways, go ahead.
And then demons were basically the same thing, but from Satan. Satan would dispatch these demons. And the main difference being that angels are privy to everything God can see or know about a given thing. So angels may not be omniscient the way that God is.
Right.
But God can choose to convey to an angel everything that angel needs to know about everything that's going on so that angel can do what that angel needs to do.
Okay.
And that may be things beyond what is material.
Okay. Sure.
On the other hand, I was taught that the devil only has a limited access to what we know and
Okay.
limited access to who we are.
Okay.
That the problem with opening the door to sin is that you're opening the door to the devil. So if you keep the door closed, the devil can't get to you, right? And so the demons can only do what the devil tells the demons to do.
Okay.
Now, I will say, there's a really great short book that you've probably read, C.S. Lewis, The Screwtape Letters.
Yes.
In it, it's kind of fascinating because it's like an elder demon who's mentoring a younger demon.
Yes.
And basically, it's a little book about how we humans sort of tick a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in it. I haven't read it in decades, but I feel like if I read it today, I don't think there's anything in it that I would find like, whoa.
Right.
Because I don't think C.S. Lewis really did that, right?
No.
So there's a fair amount of tongue-in-cheek in here.
Yes.
But it's a great book to read if you have a fascination with, like, the underworld.
Right.
Because it's a really great little book about that. So angels and demons, then I grew up in the 80s, which was a heyday for demonizing all kinds of things, movies, music, books. I mean, not that unlike where we are now. I remember, like, in pop culture, there were TV shows like Touched by an Angel that happened in the 90s, right?
Right. Okay.
And that show, I don't know if you ever saw that,
No.
but it had Roma Downey, who was Irish and fair-skinned and gorgeous, and she portrayed an angel that God would dispatch through another angel who was played by Della Reese, who I loved.
Yes.
And so Della Reese would send her on assignment,
Okay.
and the episode would be about her intervening in human affairs to fix some kind of issue or to be there when something happened. So it's very not biblical at all.
Right. But very hands-on.
And very much like, it's almost like, what was that show? Quantum Leap, where he would just like be thrown into a situation, like he didn't know when he was or where he was, and he had to like fix something, and he embodied somebody else's body while he was doing it.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this.
No.
So, but it was kind of sort of like that.
Okay.
And then, at the end, Roma would make her little speech about whatever it was that the people needed to know, and she would be revealed to them as an angel, and then she would like poof and go away.
Okay. That sounds kind of like the Hallmark Guardian Angel.
It's
idea.
very much like that.
Okay.
And then, more recently, we've had Lucifer, the show about Lucifer, where he's just like this kind of really handsome playboy type, And I haven't watched Lucifer all the way through. I've seen a few episodes, but he has a swagger about him, but he's also not this like fierce, intense.
Right.
I mean, he has moments of being intense, but mostly he's just very self-absorbed and very like a playboy, right? He's just very, and that, that figures.
Right.
Kind of. It's like if Satan is everything that Christians say Satan is, then he wouldn't be so preoccupied with us. He'd be a lot more preoccupied with himself, I think.
Yeah, he might run for office, for example.
Maybe he already has.
I'm not saying anything, but that's that preoccupation with self, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Not that all public servants are preoccupied with themselves.
Definitely not. Yeah. That's like such a mixed bag of where my ideas about angels and demons have come from. But I will say that in recent years, I don't really think about either of them very much.
Okay.
I think angels in the Bible, particularly in studies we've done even as recently as Genesis,
right.
Angels really do serve as messengers for God. Mm-hmm. They come and they impart knowledge. They give, in some cases, they kind of give gifts of a sort, or they like enlighten people and they give them like what they need to know to make the next step of the journey. And then in the New Testament, of course, we have angels coming to Mary, coming to Joseph. We have angels all throughout Scripture, and so I do believe that angels exist. Are angels, the person that helps you on the side of the road when you have a flat tire and it's the middle of the night and somebody shows up and fixes it and then disappears and you never see them again? Is that an angel? I don't know. My mother would say maybe. I mean, she, I think, believes in like how angels sort of live among us, walk among us, and come to sort of step in and help when nobody else is there to help, and that's one of God's ways of reaching us.
Okay. All right, so let's stay on that one for just a second.
Okay.
So for that one, for me, feels more strongly more like the Holy Spirit inspiring somebody, or someone paying attention to need in the world.
Yeah.
Because those people don't just actually disappear, right? I mean, I've never heard of anybody actually disappearing.
Right.
That's the way I think about that one, is more like, paying attention to where the Holy Spirit is guiding, paying attention to the need you see in the world, all of those kinds of things.
Definitely, right.
An example might be when I was walking to the event tonight that we went to, there was a woman who was coming to get into a doorway, and she was on crutches with a knee brace, and it was obvious like she was new to the whole crutches thing. Like it was hard for her. Okay. And I just happened to be walking along and I saw her and I was like, "Can I open the door for you?" And she was so grateful, like thanked me 1,000 times, right? Of course, I'm never going to see her again, right? I'm sure that if she's the kind of person who thinks that way, I might as well be an angel.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
Whereas for me, it was like, I pay attention to the fact that somebody might need help. I could give it. It was easy. It cost me nothing.
Right.
Right? So that's kind of an interesting way to think about angels. The angels as God's SWAT team is kind of new for me. I mean, obviously, we've talked before on this podcast about the idea that angels and demons are, God and the devil, whatever, are duking it out in the afterlife. That was, thrown away as heresy in the 2nd century.
Yes.
Right. And then revived.
and yet here we are.
So that one I don't think about. So one of my teachers I don't believe actually said this specifically, but indicated that he believed that angels were a manifestation of God's glory.
Okay.
If you think about God's glory as filling the non-material world.
Okay.
Okay. And angels are that. And when they are, I'm extrapolating, but the idea that they are essentially God's glory in action.
Okay.
Okay. So that would fit in a little bit with your idea that angels could know what God knows if God intended them to do that, right? Because they wouldn't actually be separate from God.
They wouldn't be separate from God, right. and also they're empowered to speak for God.
Right. But the idea that, like, if they're they're actually literally part of the glory of God that then gets formed for human presentation, right? And then they are absorbed sort of back into the glory of God. That's a whole different way of thinking about it. Like, it's much more the matter into energy, energy into matter movement.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I am sure I am not stating that well, but I think that the idea about matter into energy, energy into matter is correct. I think that if God can get that all in motion, which I think God can, then that explains for me things like turning water into wine.
Sure.
Right? Not a problem.
Right.
So then the idea that God's glory would completely fill the non-material world and occasionally break into our world through one way or another. Angels being the one that has to do with taking on some sort of materialish form.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure what to do with that physically.
Right.
But there's something about that made me go, okay. All right, I'm willing to believe that there are angels, if we mean that. And I've been playing with the idea that there are angels that are unique and separate entities that live in God's realm. Live is the wrong way to put it, but exist in God's realm. I don't know what to do with them once I get them there. I don't know if I haven't come to any ideas about whether they have their own consciousness, like whether they're persons or not. But that one, I'm playing with that one and going, okay, so what if those entities exist? What does that look like?
Right.
So then we flip over to the whole demon thing.
Yeah.
I have real trouble with the idea of demons.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned this before on the podcast, or I've mentioned it before, and it seems like human beings are good enough at getting ourselves into trouble that we don't need a demon to do this, right? But it's hard for me to say, okay, so there are these non-material entities besides God that emerge or don't emerge based on God's desire for that to happen. Why wouldn't there be demons?
Yeah.
Well, the reason there wouldn't be demons is because I don't believe there's somebody out there who's fighting against God who's going, let me turn those angels into bad guys. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole piece where I go,
Right.
So I don't think that one's one I really can't get around. It just feels like a psychological construct to me.
Yeah.
Or a literary construct.
Demons and the devil are a great scapegoat. So
back to the screw tape letters.
Right. And you hear people, the old cliche, the devil made me do it or whatever. It's like people are great at blaming. He just can't get that devil off his back.
Right.
What are you talking about? He's making choices.
Right.
And he just keeps making the wrong choices.
Right.
The devil isn't making him do anything.
Right.
The devil doesn't make us do things any more than God makes us do things. We have free will. Like we choose the things we do and we choose the things we don't. It's the way we were created.
Right.
So to blame the devil for, the way you treated somebody or the way you talk to somebody or for an addiction you have or for bad behavior, it's just like it's an excuse. It's just like don't blame the devil for the stupid crappy things you do. Just own it.
The devil does not deserve that kind of blame.
No.
Yeah, I've always had trouble with the fallen angel idea too. I mean, first of all, it is mentioned as one poetic idea, and people have just run with it.
Yeah.
But I think that the fallen angel idea is the non-material version of the exile from Eden.
I think so too. Right.
In order to get to why the heavens could be screwed up. Now, why you would think the heavens are screwed up, I can't go with that.
I can't help you with that.
But it is the same myth cast differently.
Yeah.
Right? Well, first of all, for that to happen, angels would have to be discrete beings on their own.
They would.
So the non-material world would be completely filled with the glory of God and angels.
And angels.
Like, do they push the glory out of the way?
Right.
like, how does that work? And of course, if they're non-material, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's no in the way to get. But my little brain, when I fill a room, call it eternity, with the glory of God, and I try to imagine there being room for an angel, I'm like, wait, I don't know how that would work.
Right.
Now, I know that's a limit of my own imagination, but there's something about them being discrete entities on their own who are non-material and yet not attached to God, really, and not very savvy unless God allows them to be. My mind says, okay, wait a minute. If God fills non-material reality, and yet there are distinct entities there too, other than things that are actually God.
Right. What do you do with that?
What do you do with that?
Well, and the thing that I've always had problem with over the whole idea of a fallen angel is, well, then angels have free will? Mm-hmm. And if angels have free will, doesn't that just make them humans without bodies? Ooh. And that contradicts my entire view of what angels are.
Right.
And I think that contradicts the Bible
yes.
on what angels are.
Yes.
So...
Right.
For an angel to fall, an angel has to choose.
Right.
So Lucifer, in that case, would have chosen
right.
a different path. But angels can't choose.
Okay, why not?
The way I understand it,
okay.
Angels are basically an extension of God's glory.
Okay.
They are there to deliver messages for God, to do whatever God needs them to do. And some of what they do, at least in the Bible, some of what they have done has sort of dipped into human existence in some way.
Right.
You know, talking to Mary, talking to Joseph, talking
Abraham.
to Hagar, right. How angels would come in and they would basically say, God says this.
Right. And sometimes they would say, I say.
And sometimes they would even say, I say. So speaking for God.
Right.
As God's mouthpiece, really.
Right.
And so I don't think a creature who has free will could do that. Like...
Right.
Without being like hypnotized by God, like ooh, you know, watch the charm as it goes by. Yeah, I don't know. But none of that makes any sense to me because angels, I don't believe in any of the accounts in the Bible that angels are creatures with free will who make choices to go. Otherwise, they would just go on their own and say, oh, wait, God's going to do that? I got to go tell him. And then they would go and just do it on their own.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You never see an angel just sort of acting.
There are no rogue angels. They just don't go rogue.
Or even enthusiastic angels.
No.
Like, there's no enthusiasm with the angels.
No, they're kind of like,
appear.
Oh, okay, well, here we go.
They appear, and the first thing they say is, do not be afraid.
Yeah, do not be afraid.
Which suggests to me that they're scary.
That they're scary, right.
Okay. Rather than, beatific little... But that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. Okay, all right. So, discrete entities with free will. Yeah. Yeah. That would be... Okay, if you believed that, then it's a really easy step to when you die, you become an angel.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's just dumb.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. All right. So, listeners, we need you to figure this out for us. Please figure this out for us. We love to hear from you. Cocktail Theology is where we are. We love talking about stuff like this, even when we don't have any answers. So give us ideas for episodes. Give us ideas for cocktails, because this Cuba Libre is not great. So we would love to hear from you. Reach out.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Funny how the view can change, how life just seems to rearrange itself, no matter what it was. I don't know how it goes, but look, moving on feels pretty good. Moving on feels pretty good.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now. We welcome your comments, questions, and ideas for conversations and for cocktails. Please get in touch with us at our website, cocktailtheology.com. Cocktail Theology is a production of SFS. Our theme song is Moving On Feels Pretty Good, recorded by yours truly, Benton Stokes. You can find my music wherever you stream your favorite artists. Join us next Thursday for another new episode.